Welcome to Real Estate and Murder, a podcast about real estate and murder.
I am Amy Brockbank.
And I am Sarah Brager. We are both licensed real estate agents in the state of Utah who have a common fascination with true crime.
We are here to tell you stories of murder amongst the real estate community. It might be an agent, it might be a client, it might be an undetected serial killer.
When it comes to real estate crimes, some are predators and some are prey.
We just want to issue a trigger warning. The content of these cases can be difficult to hear from time to time, and please listen with care.
Hi, Amy.
Hey, Sarah.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Real Estate and Murder, the bonus episodes.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm really excited, Amy. We have a very special guest today.
It's special.
Like a special guest. Like a special guest. How about you introduce our special guest?
Yeah, we have Jonathan with Aerolite Consulting with us, and we're excited to have him on.
Happy to be here. ...
My husband, not my husband, your husband.
Yeah, he is my husband.
Like Jonathan with Aerolite. Did you bring a business card?
I'll leave it.
Okay, but I'm really excited that Jonathan, Amy's husband, is here to talk to us about, I don't know, all kinds of crazy stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about bonus material. He sponsored our episode 3 for season 1, and we were just really excited to kind of pick his brain about what he sees in the industry.
Yeah, in inspections, right? And all types of, I don't know how you want to say it, but like everything that relates to that field of like understanding the home. Is that a fair way to say it? Like understanding your home and what goes into it.
For sure, yeah. I do inspections, largely home inspections, but also commercial inspections. Also do a lot of like environmental consulting and stuff for different things like asbestos and lead and mold.
He's a jack of all trades.
Yeah.
He's a general contractor. He just does it all.
He does it all. Okay. Mold, asbestos.
Yep.
What else did you say?
Lead paint.
Lead paint, that's right. Okay. And then the classic meth.
Radon. Yep. Meth, radon.
Meth and radon. Okay. I mean, maybe that's a good question to kick off with, if you don't mind, because I get asked frequently with buyers nowadays what radon is. And I try to describe it without getting into detail because it's not my field of expertise.
Sure.
But I want to pass it off to a professional. So what would your answer to that question be?
So radon is it's a naturally occurring gas. Comes up from the soil. It's present all the time. We're always breathing in low dosages of it. But it's radioactive. That's the main problem with it. And so potentially can cause lung cancer. Second leading cause of lung cancer behind smoking in the U.S. So quite a few people die from radon.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's 21,000 people a year they estimate die from.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Like 7 out of 1,000, right? Will be susceptible to radon. Is that the?
Yeah, depending on how many years you live with an elevated level of radon. So anything above a 4 picocuries. If you live at a 4 for 20 years, they estimate about 7 people out of 1,000.
Wow.
Which is not a huge percentage, but when you consider 21,000 people a year, that's a lot of people.
I mean, if you're one of the 7, that's a huge percentage.
Well, especially if there's ways to prevent
for sure
that. So you can get it tested, and then what happens once it comes back positive?
So if it comes back elevated, you can mitigate it, basically. They're called radon mitigation systems, where they basically extend a pipe, rudimentary pipe, basically, that goes underneath the house with a little fan, very similar to like a bathroom fan. It basically just pulls the air from underneath the house and vents it up through the roof. So it's a pretty simple system, but very effective. It's getting pretty common where a lot of builders, even new construction, will just put them in mandatorily, even if there's not known elevated levels of radon in the area.
Okay, like preventative.
Really for sure.
So I need a radon system in my house, actually, which you know all about because you tested my house that we recently purchased for radon.
Yep.
So, okay, let me ask you a question then to back up. So you said we're all exposed at some point, like we're all breathing in some level of radon.
Right.
Is that all parts of the earth created equal? Like, explain to me how we're all breathing it, but we might not all be susceptible to serious health consequences.
Yeah, so primarily it's whether an area has high levels of radon is based on sort of what's in the soil, what different elements, particularly uranium, is basically one of the precursors to radon. So if you have an area that has high levels of uranium just in the soil, which oftentimes is found like in the in mountainous areas. So along the benches, oftentimes we'll have higher levels, but not always. But that's also why you can have your house have low levels of radon, but your next door neighbor can have elevated levels because maybe their house just happens to be on a spot where there's a greater concentration of uranium and then in turn radon. So
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So, funny story, when I was a newer agent, and this radon was becoming more a part of the conversation in real estate purchases than probably it had been before. I had a client, I remember, she got a radon test, and then she called me, and she was just panicking, like, oh my gosh, my radon test came so high, like, I could die of this, we have to get this mitigated, or I have to walk away. And I was like, well, what's the rate, or, the measurement, what did it come back at? And she's like, 8. In my head, I'm like, 8? Calm down. Like, 8 out of what? 100. But you mentioned the number 4. So
right.
4 is the benchmark for like getting into dangerous territory, right?
Right. So that's the EPA's action point, basically their action level.
Oh.
Anything 4 or higher is where they can say you should put in a mitigation system. They do recommend that even between a 2 and a 4, you should still consider putting in a system. But typically it's that 4 level is where people usually will respond with a mitigation system.
So 8 was a big deal. I was like, relax. And I didn't say that to her. Obviously, I called and talked to a professional and found out some more, but I just remember that moment forever. So have you ever done a radon test in a home that came back under 2, or under 1? I mean, if we're all constantly exposed to some
Yeah, certainly.
level?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like just the other day, I tested a house that came back at about a 0.3, 0.4.
Lucky them.
They actually did have a mitigation system in place.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
But that's about the level that we, on average, are exposed to just out and about outside, is about
Okay.
a 0.3, 0.4. And so their mitigation system was working very well.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, I continuously learn something new every time we talk to a professional outside of ourselves.
Well, even when we talk to each other, I feel like
That's true.
We just have different points of view.
Yeah, that's true. So burning question was radon. Amy, what about you?
Yeah, I just wanted to just have you let our audience know, why, if they're looking for a house, why would they want to have a home inspection, especially new construction areas?
Sure.
What's the purpose of a home inspection for them?
Well, it can be for a couple different things, I guess, sort of depending on the person. But ultimately, the way I look at it is just it's the biggest purchase that most people will ever make is their home. And so just kind of knowing what you're getting into, what problems there might be, what defects, what things might have been missed by the builder, what things have deteriorated over time. There's just a lot of variables. When you're building, there's so many different components that it's really easy for things to get missed or just for things to get worn out or things change over time from settling or from weathering, or from shoddy craftsmanship as well. So yeah, it's just a good way to basically sort of know what it is you're getting into. If you're spending $500,000, which is that's about the starting price.
Average.
Yep,
Yeah.
sure is.
So paying a couple $100 to sort of know,
Yeah, and your job is to find everything, even cosmetic stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't focus on cosmetic stuff too much, just because some places you'd be, inspecting all day long if you mentioned everything that was cosmetic. So primarily it's, the stuff that's the safety issues is probably priority number 1, but then also just major defects that might end up costing money to repair, things that should be fixed. Cosmetic stuff, I oftentimes will point out if it seems like it's something like, this will probably be something they want to fix,
Yeah.
Not necessarily maybe a little tiny ding in a wall, but something like a chip in a bathtub maybe is something that should be mentioned. So,
Yeah. Okay. So I was telling Sarah earlier today that I wanted to know some of your wild, outlandish stories. And I wasn't going to throw Sarah under the bus, but then she talked about how it would kind of be funny to still have our audience hear the story. So I'm going to ask you, have you ever been scared when you've been inspecting? Which I know you're a man and you're not, whatever.
Scared, not like scared on a ladder, but like something in the house freaked you out, right?
Yeah.
That's what we're going
I mean,
with? Okay.
we're real
I've been
estate and
scared
murder.
on a ladder. And
Oh, I'm sure you have.
He
I'm
almost
scared
fell off
looking
the
at ladders. Oh.
Okay, so tell us, just off the ladder story.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely been a handful of times where I've been a bit freaked out. There was one house that I was inspecting, an older home, probably built in the late 1800s, and the house was totally empty, totally vacant. The only piece of personal property in the house was a an old photo / painting. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was over the fireplace. It was just one of those old,
That's
creepy,
so creepy.
They purposely
this
left
old,
it
creepy
behind.
lady.
But also best prank ever.
Yeah. So it was just one of those photos that, like, no matter where you stood, it seemed like the eyes
It
were
looked
kind
right.
of following you. That freaked me out. That same house had almost like a cell door down in their basement.
Oh, I
Like it was
hate
locked
those.
that I couldn't get into. It was like an old wood door.
Oh my
you know,
gosh.
Just like
But did the wood door look like it was part of the home, or was it brought in additional to?
it looked like it was added later.
Okay.
It was really old, but it didn't look quite as old as
Yeah, I
this
don't know what
house.
an original 1800s door
Yeah.
would look
No.
like.
It just looked like a castle door, you know?
Oh,
Kind of just old wood with the like old clanky
yeah.
handles to open it and close it, old hinges and stuff like that.
Oh
But,
my gosh.
yeah.
It was a
So, like-
straight up dungeon.
Yeah, like
Basically,
a torture room or
basically,
something.
yeah.
Basically.
Wow. I mean, that's interesting also because, I mean, the podcast about murder, right? Real estate and murder.
Yeah.
And we've talked sometimes before about, like, does a house have a vibe
Yeah.
or an energy or a feeling, right? And I mean, it varies on your personal
Yeah.
belief, but also, like, what you feel when you're in a home. But
I think they definitely do, but I also think that oftentimes we create that vibe ourselves.
oh,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, I've definitely been in homes where I've been in there multiple times, and maybe I was freaked out one time, but not the other times for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Just the mental state when you go in. So
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that makes perfect
Yeah.
sense.
When I was an assistant for another agent, she had a listing that I was pretty sure was haunted, like 100%. Like, and I'm not superstitious like that at all. But every time I was in that house, it freaked me out.
Just a feeling. It was
Yeah,
just,
it was just one part of the house, and it was just like something is here. Like it just, which it sounds weird, but every time, and it was a gorgeous house.
oh, really?
Yeah, it was a high-end, very beautiful house. But this one room freaked me out every time I was in there.
It's so interesting. It's interesting what our minds do to us, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Okay, well, let's go ahead and throw me under the bus then. I mean, that's how you referenced it, but I actually don't think so. I think it's funny. So, I mean, we'll talk about this more on the podcast later on, I'm sure. But my husband and I just bought our house together, and the home was built in 1945. And of course, we asked Jonathan to inspect it. And the house is, I mean, we love the house. Don't get me wrong. We love the house. And it has some of the charm of an older home still, right? Even though parts of it have been updated, it still has this charm, and we love it. But we're building out the basement, which isn't like dug into the ground, but it's a, you know, like a regular basement level with an entry from outside. And we're going to build a master bedroom out there. So we were like really excited about this one room. And we meet Jonathan for the inspection walkthrough, which is when the inspector meets with the homeowner if they want, right? And goes over everything they found in the inspection, which was incredibly helpful. Anyways, we're standing in the room that's going to be our master bedroom. And Jonathan's like, by the way, I totally heard a voice. I'm pretty sure I heard a voice. And I don't know what you were expecting of me, by the way, if you were expecting like me or Travis to be like, oh, shoot. Like, but I was kind of excited, wasn't I? I was like, that's amazing. But tell us, I mean,
yeah,
just...
normally I probably wouldn't have said anything, but because I know you, I thought it was funny. But yeah, I was inspecting this down in the basement, and there's an old brick wall, old bearing brick wall, like an old chimney.
Yep.
And I got down close to it because there's a little bit of water damage that I was looking at down at the base. And I swore I heard a voice coming from the brick. And the first thing I'm thinking is like, I've seen lots of horror movies where people are like bricked into a wall or something.
Oh my gosh,
You
the
know?
spirit was trapped in the
Yeah.
wall.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Sarah's got a dead body in the master bedroom behind a brick wall.
I mean, if there's going to be a spirit watching me sleep, it should be filming me for TikTok. Like Amy keeps talking about all these channels that people make money, like letting people watch them sleep. I mean, it'd be a weird business plan, but so I mean, if that happened, what did the
hear
ghost
him
say?
say?
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't hear any words specifically. It was more of like just a very soft whisper or a whine, but it definitely sounded like a female voice.
Wow.
But who knows? Maybe it was the next door neighbor outside. I don't know.
Oh, that'd be the coolest neighbor ever to just be messing with like new homeowners. She's on the roof.
Help me!
Talking down the chimney.
Help me!
That's actually great.
Yeah, I told Sarah we were going to deep dive into research on her house to see if anybody had died, because in season 2 we do this whole I don't know.
what happens when
Deep
people die in
dive,
houses.
yeah.
Yeah.
What would
Yeah.
you really want to know, though?
I mean, at this point, probably not. It was all funny until now. Like, but, you know, now that I know it's a female, I don't know. We'll have to, like, sage the house or, I don't know,
Yeah.
sell it immediately. Whatever.
I mean, I don't necessarily think that it was a ghost or anything like that.
Totally.
I think it was most likely my imagination,
Just
or
for
I
the
heard
wind,
something.
the
Yeah, for
wind.
sure.
Absolutely.
It was just one of
Really?
those weird situations that you sort of second guess yourself. I'm like, what was that? Did I hear that?
I mean, it
So-
makes for a good story, though. And the house was built in 1945, which I told Amy today. I just realized today how long ago that actually is.
So yeah, Sarah was like, it wasn't that long ago.
I was like, that's like black and white TV
World
time.
War II.
Yeah, World War II. There you go. That's what it was. Well, now, yeah, we do need to get on that and research it, see what we can find.
So you mentioned that you don't always tell the homeowner when you hear something. Have you heard something before?
Well, I did hear something before, but that one was actually a voice that I heard.
What?
I was inspecting a house. It was years ago. It was maybe, I don't know, 12 years ago. And I go into the house, and anytime I go into a house, even if it's vacant, I always sort of introduce myself just to make sure if there's somebody in the home that they know I'm there.
Sure.
So they don't, I don't walk into them in a compromised position or something like that.
Yeah.
And I introduced myself, and there was no response. So I just started my inspection. And I probably working, I don't know, 30 or 40 minutes into it. And then I heard a hello. It was pretty clear hello. And I responded back, hello, it's me, it's Jonathan, inspector. And there was no response. And so I just kept working again. And again, I heard a hello a little bit later.
Oh my gosh.
And same kind of thing. I said hello, and I went upstairs and sort of was looking around and couldn't find anybody. So after like the third or fourth time of hearing this hello, I finally went into a room, and there was a bird cage with a parrot.
Oh my gosh. I was waiting for the end of that story. Like, oh
Wait,
my
the house
gosh.
was vacant and they left their bird?
They had started packing out, and so they
Okay.
had left some of their
I
contents
was like,
still.
They leave their bird. The bird's like,
Yeah.
hello, help me, I need a cracker.
So
Oh my
I was
gosh.
freaked. I was freaked out because that one.
That is so
Because I
scary.
knew it was a real voice, and so then you start thinking like, okay, if this person doesn't know who I am, they might come out with a gun.
Of
you know.
course.
So,
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh,
Freaked
that's
out.
terrifying.
Yeah.
so I've had a couple situations similar like that where you just feel uncomfortable in a house for whatever
Yeah.
reason. Some justified, some not. But
Sure.
Have you ever accidentally walked in on someone in a vacant house?
Okay, so that I have had that happen once, and that story just came to my mind when Jonathan was sharing. And this was just last summer, I want to say. And there was a home that kind of similar, like the owner had already started packing out. And the instructions for the agent, the way that we book with other agents when we're going to show their homes, sometimes you can leave notes to the showing agent. And it was very clear, like, this homeowner lives in the home. However, her caregiver removes her every time there's a showing. So make sure you schedule 24 hours in advance or whatever. So we scheduled in advance, cleared it with the agent in person also, just to make sure we were good to go. We get to the home. I'm a few minutes ahead of my client. So I knock on the door, ring the doorbell, just triple check. No answer. So, okay, we're good. We start walking through the home. Most of it's fake. So like the kitchen was emptied out. The garage was emptied out. And we're walking down the hall towards the bedrooms, and I open one of the doors, and the lady's sleeping in her bed.
Oh, no.
Straight up sleeping. But she had heard us coming down the hall, I think, so she was kind of like turning over. And I was just so horrified. Like I felt horrible that we were in there. But then she started like calling for help. So like you're in this, like, you feel like you've walked in on someone,
Yeah.
but they weren't supposed to be there. I'd cleared it over and over again. And she ended up kind of like murmuring, like muttering a little bit, like her caregiver hadn't shown up. I know. It was awful, right? But I walk in on this person, just covers almost completely over her pillow, like back to the door. And I'm like, oh my God, did I just find a dead body? Like
Yeah.
I'd called out, I'd ring the doorbell, I knocked, and nothing.
Oh,
So that was intense. What about you?
it was a couple summers ago. I was showing a client. It was a vacant house. The family had upped and moved to California. So there was show whenever you want, but just let us kind of know that you're entering the house, and cleared it with the listing agent, brought my buyers in, and we're all the way up on the main level, looked through everything. We're headed downstairs to the basement, and I can hear heavy breathing. And I was
my
like,
gosh.
so I tell my clients, I'm like, hang on one second, I'll go first, because if one of us is going to get shot, I'll be the one
Are you
to get out.
serious, Amy?
I did. So anyway, I walk down the stairs and I'm like, hello. And we hear this really heavy breathing.
No.
Turn into this main, this basement had like 2 bedrooms, but it was clear in the back. So the family room or the main living room downstairs was really massive because they hadn't really built out any of the rooms or anything. And there was a young man who, young college age young man, had his like VR headset on and noise canceling headphones and was like working out to a video. And Sarah, this is the worst part because I was like, okay, I'm going to have to tell him we're here, but also too, like, I'm going to scare the crap out of this kid.
Yeah.
And I tapped him on the shoulder. He screamed like...
You tapped him on the shoulder instead of like running in front of him?
Yeah, you can't see. He had the VR headset
Oh,
on.
true. Okay, you did say that.
Yeah, so I'm like...
That would be me.
Yeah. I'm like grabbing his shoulder, like... and his arm, so like he knew, like, and I was just like tapping, and I felt so bad. I was like, I'm so sorry. Turns out he was in Utah to go to college, but he knew his parents had moved out and just wanted like a place to get away from his like roommates or whatever. Anyway, it's funny now, but I feel bad for the kid. Like,
oh my gosh, he never played VR again.
Broad daylight.
Oh my gosh.
In his parents' vacant house.
Wow.
So.
Okay, so quick question then back to inspections for a second here, because I was thinking, so I love older homes. I bought an older home, but you had mentioned even in new construction, you find errors or, whatever you want to call it, things that shouldn't have happened or maybe happened the wrong way. I as an agent and as a buyer even expected the list of complications or issues that we found in my home, for example. Like I expected a 18-page report, right?
Sure.
It's an old home. In a new home, what are some things you've come across, given that it's new construction with brand new, contractors are in there, subcontractors are in there every day. What have you seen that just kind of blew your mind?
We definitely come across quite a bit, actually, even in new construction. It's obviously not as much as inspecting an older home. But again, like I mentioned earlier, it's just such a very complicated process to build a house. There's lots of components, so it's very easy for just little things to get missed. And usually it's things like, a small leak underneath a sink, pretty easy things that somebody didn't catch when they pressurized the water lines. But I have found some where there was an exterior wall that wasn't insulated at all.
Oh, wow.
Or a pretty common one is ventilation issues in an attic where they don't have sufficient vents or any vents in an attic space. There's definitely things that are found. They're usually pretty simple ones to be addressed, pretty simple things to fix. It's usually not anything real structural or anything like that. But you're dealing with contractors that are maybe in and out. They have subcontractors that they're coordinating with, and so there's lots of just different people, different eyeballs on the project. People sort of assume that city inspectors, when they come out to do like their four-way and stuff, are going to catch all these things, and they oftentimes do. They catch a lot of things, but if you ever seen a four-way inspection done, sometimes they're really quick. If they're really busy, they'll be in and out of a house. They'll test 3 or 4 outlets instead of the 40 or 50 that might be in the home.
Right.
And they're in and out in 5 or 10 minutes. That's a pretty quick inspection for them to catch every little thing. And so it's definitely possible for little things or even some big things to get missed by city inspectors. So.
Well, and when the buyers are going into a new construction, they're only focused on the cosmetic. They're like blue taping dings and paint and, different things. They're not looking at, there was a vent that's supposed to be here or an outlet that's supposed to be outside and they've stuccoed over it and now the outlet's hidden.
Well, to Jonathan's point, it's a lot to look at.
Yeah.
But, we talk on the podcast about how we want to tie in some like our education about real estate, right? So explain blue taping.
Oh, on a new construction?
Yeah, because that's language that we use all the time. But what does blue taping
Sure.
mean?
Right before a buyer closes on a new construction, we go and meet with, it's usually the contractor that's the representative of the builder, the one that's over the whole project. And that's an opportunity for my client to get the tour of the house, make sure like the carpet that they wanted was there, cabinets, countertops, but they also go through and they get to mark every little thing that they feel needs to still be fixed. So usually drywall, that step comes in before they do the flooring. And so when the flooring guys come in, they can ding up the walls, or the baseboards get mixed up, or, all these different things that happen. Maybe they pick different light fixtures in the bathroom and they don't match or something. So they get a roll of blue masking tape, painter's tape, whatever you want to call it. And they just rip off little pieces of it and just mark everywhere that they need something. And I've been where they've had a third party come in. The builder has allowed a third party, and the third party kind of walks them through that. And so it's not anybody with the building company that's, oh, well, we meant to fix that, or we didn't get that. Like, because it's nobody's fault, really, that it's not done. It's just the client wants it done or whatever. And so those ones go a little smoother than some of the other ones. But
Sure. So when a client blue tapes up things that they've found, whether it's scuffs or the wrong light fixtures or whatever, that is, as long as everyone agrees upon it, meaning the contractor or the listing agent as the representative agrees, then those things get touched up, fixed, replaced, repaired.
It's usually the week before closing, so the builder usually has 3 or 5 days to kind of go in and touch up everything, and they have crews that go in, and then we'll clean it up and have it so it's move-in ready for the client.
Sure.
Right.
So speaking of new construction then, we had a big new construction boom here in Utah County in like 2020, 2021, right?
Right.
And I remember clearly, like, some buyers would come through and say, well, we'll just waive the inspection. It's new construction. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Or even sometimes a representative or an agent of a builder might say, like, well, you don't really need it because we're going to do it. So just what I know from my experience in the industry, and I'm assuming, because you're nodding your head at me, Jonathan, that's, like, we'd always advise against waiving an inspection, even if it's new construction.
Yeah, I always think it's worth doing an inspection for sure. I get that that's self-serving for me, but yeah, there pretty much is never an inspection where I don't find something. Oftentimes it is very minimal, and so it's probably not worth the cost of what my inspection was.
Sure.
But I think people would be pretty surprised with how many things are found. Even sewer scopes, when they're done, sometimes with new construction, we'll find that sewer lines are damaged from, somebody ran over it with the backhoe while they were doing the grading or something like that. So there's just so many issues. And when the market's really busy, back in the early 2020s or whatnot, when the market was going crazy, that's actually probably when I found most of the issues were when the building was just going sort of nuts. And my guess is it's probably just because
people were cutting corners.
Yeah,
trying to
just
hurry.
Contractors are so busy that they're maybe not using their first choice subcontractors. They're using their B and C teams basically to wrap up stuff, and maybe they're not quite as good as. So the quality of work seemed to have dipped for a couple of years.
That makes sense.
Really busy.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so new construction homes. Back to older homes for a minute.
Yeah.
I want to know, like in a home built in 1945 or in the 70s or whatever, there tends to be sometimes a lot of DIY stuff along the way, as homeowners have had it in past hands time and time again. What is the wonkiest, weirdest DIY thing you've ever seen? Because we could talk about haunted houses and ghosts and how someone lives in my chimney that whispered at you, but the weirdest part of homes that I see oftentimes are the DIY things that people come up with. What's the weirdest thing you've seen?
Oh, I don't know. I've seen a lot of them. I'm trying to think of what's the weirdest, but I mean, we see just all kinds of strange things. People do some really unusual stuff with plumbing, where they have like different weird. They use different, garden hoses for plumbing lines, or.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I've seen some where
I never even thought of that.
So I'm trying to think of an example of it, but I've seen all kinds of ones where they've used plumber's putty where it shouldn't be used, and where clearly it looks like they had an issue here. Yeah. They tried to fix it, but they had no idea what they were doing while they were trying to fix it. So we see that a lot in older homes. You get that do-it-yourselfer guy, the handyman guy at his own house, which he fixed it. It just probably isn't ideal.
This reminds me, my cute little grandpa who's 93, he'll tie like a rag around his kitchen faucet that's leaking because then the rag catches the water and he doesn't need to
which fixes the leak, obviously. I mean,
his little heart.
Garden hoses for plumbing, that's pretty good. I mean, that's top notch.
Yeah. So, obviously lots of electrical stuff as well. We find lots of issues with like three-way switches, which are the switches if you have multiple switches that control the same light fixture.
I hate that.
And they should, if they're wired correctly, they should basically, all of them should be able to operate the light independently, no matter what the positions of the other fixtures or the other switches are. But we see all kinds of ones where they're just wired really funky, where I've seen one before, I remember now, that depending on which order of switches you had up, it would actually turn on a different light, like outside.
Oh my gosh.
Other than that, somehow it was like connected to the light fixture outside when it wasn't supposed to be. So you just get some really weird, weird funky things that just shouldn't be happening.
Quirky little things.
Yeah.
Amy, what DIY stuff have you seen?
I mean, I don't know that it was a DIY, but it was an interesting choice of a master bathroom remodel. Like, it was kind of where the 80s met modern. Like, it's like they wanted a style, but they couldn't choose which style they kind of wanted, so they threw everything that they liked together in one bathroom. I mean, so I don't know if that's DIY, or maybe they paid someone a lot of money to have it look like that, but it was definitely like a unique taste to that owner.
Like, give me one example. Like, was there carpet in the bathroom?
Yeah, the old school, like, jetted corner tubs that they had up, and then you'd have mirrors behind them, and yeah, so it went up like that, but then along the wall it was more like a wallpaper, like a modernized, like, wood wallpaper, and then the fixtures were a different style, and my client and I, it was so distracting. We sat in there and we tried to figure out like what era they were going for in what corner of the bathroom. It was very different.
So they could have done a good DIY job, but it was like pieced it together as I went.
Well, and I don't know if it was a DIY. They may have hired someone and told them, this is what I want it to look like.
Yeah, I just mean, like, how often do you have clients or even friends or even you guys in your home and you're like, we'll replace the carpet this year, next year we'll do paint. Or like, we'll replace the sinks, but we can't afford the tub yet. And then 10 years later, it just looks like a mishmash. Right. Yeah, it's just a mess.
Yeah. What about you?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I guess it's a weird on-the-spot question because we're all struggling with it, even though I'm sure we all talk about it every day to each other. Like, guess what I saw in this house? The thing that drives me the thing that drives me the most nuts is when I see in homes where people replace flooring, but they don't match it. So, like, you'll walk into one room, say it's LVP in one room, like it looks like wood. You guys, LVP. And then you walk into the next room and it's either LVP in a different color or the corners don't meet and the shapes don't meet. So now you're going in a different direction. Right. And then the next room's carpet. And then the next room is brown carpet. And the next room's green. That drives me nuts. Inconsistent flooring, or like when you can tell they put it in themselves and there's gaps. That drives me nuts.
Have you ever been in a house where the floor, like the levels, they seem to be off?
Yes.
There's a small step here in this room. We don't know why.
Yep.
It's like a half a step or something.
Well, and I've done, in addition, I do asbestos inspections as well. And so I've done ones where I have to take samples of flooring. And I've done homes before where there was 8 or 9 different layers of flooring material. So instead of removing the old, they just go right over the top.
Keep putting it on top.
Yeah, so multiple layers of vinyl. You got a layer of tile. They got carpet, and they didn't want to remove the carpet, so they did some sheeting over the top of the carpet, and then they did.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
that was the garden hose guy, huh? The garden hose plumbing guy.
Probably.
That was that guy for sure.
He's just saving himself some time.
They get very creative.
Yeah.
Saves a buck.
So I wanted you to tell Sarah, just as the last thing, we were talking last night when we had asked you to come on, and you had mentioned a vacant house that you were in, and you were actually in there to test for meth. And I want you to tell Sarah the story because I want to see her reaction.
Well, I love all meth-related stories, by the way, so I don't really care what the ending is, but tell me all about it.
Yeah, so the house it's a vacant house, and I'm just hired just to do a meth test on this particular one. So I just, like I mentioned earlier, I go in and I let myself into the house, but I knock on the door and I open up and there's nobody in there. It's empty. There's no furniture or anything, but I still say, hey, it's Jonathan with Aerolite, but there's no response. So I go in and I start doing my sample. So a meth test, you're in and out usually in 5 minutes or less. It's a pretty quick test. It's just a wipe test that I do. But while I'm sampling the wall, I hear something coming from the back room.
Oh my
And
gosh,
the
here we
door's
go again.
closed, and I'm just thinking, it's empty, but I'm like, so I'm just trying to hurry and get out of there. And I'm almost done when all of a sudden the door to that back room opens up.
Oh my gosh, tell me it's a bird.
No, it's not a bird. Two gentlemen come out carrying a chainsaw.
Oh my gosh, Jonathan!
And, yeah, they're carrying a chainsaw, and they come and they just walk right past me, and they go out the front door.
No!
Yeah. Of course, I just sort of stood there. I was kind of froze, like, what the heck is
Oh
this?
my gosh, you just play dead. Like, what
Yeah, I
do
said
you
hi.
do?
I said, hey.
He says hi to the chainsaw carrying man.
They didn't
Well, you got to be
respond.
friendly with them,
Right?
You got to make nice.
Yeah.
Stop it, they just walked out.
They just walked out.
You're kidding me.
So they had a chainsaw, come to find out, because they had used it to cut into the back of the house. They
They
were
were-
squatters,
Oh
and they had used a chainsaw to open a hole in the back so they could get in. And so that's why they had the chainsaw. It was-
yeah, how do you not have your own house to
Totally
stay in, but you have a
harmless.
chainsaw? Like, that is terrifying. How did that story wait all the way to the end? They just dipped, they just walked right by you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is so
They were
scary.
probably just as scared as I was, actually.
Well, I mean, I don't know. That's terrifying. Brings up an interesting subject. We'll have to see if we can find an episode that we can match up about squatters. Actually,
Yeah.
Stop me whenever you want, guys, because I can do this all day. But I do have this on our list of subjects. This is something, tell me if you've heard this before, I've learned recently in the last year or two, called frogging.
It's freaked. I
Anyone?
didn't hear about it until you had
have
mentioned
not.
it.
Frogging,
I don't think
great. I'm going to freak you out right now.
It's like that episode of, I think it was like an X-Files or CSI or something where there's someone that's living in the...
In the attic? Or
Yeah.
in the ductwork or something? Oh,
In
okay.
the
attic.
walls,
Yeah, okay.
in the attic, yeah. But it's squatting, except that you're also living in your house.
Okay, you
So
don't know
Right.
that- so they come out at night and they eat your food and...
or do
watch
whatever,
you.
Yeah.
There's a whole series on Hulu. You guys go watch it. It's called Frogging, Phrogging. It's terrifying, but we can do a bunch of episodes on that.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I've heard of that
So
happening.
crazy.
Can't imagine it's all that common, but
I mean, I hope
it's
not.
Crazy.
You checked up in my attic, though, right? Like,
Pretty sure I
did the inspection
yeah.
No, I know you did. I know you did, because I was there and I looked up and I was like, I'm not going up there, Jonathan. Oh my gosh, that is a wild story.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you for coming to share bits and tips with us. And the next time you
Yeah.
run into something like that, tell me immediately. And we'll do another episode
Sounds
because
good.
sometimes the things we see and we hear and we do in real estate are just wild,
Yeah.
including murder, I guess.
Yeah. It's never dull.
It
Real
is
estate
never-
is never dull.
It is
True.
never dull. Well, thanks, you guys, both of you, and I'll
you.
talk to you soon.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.